Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. My name is Michael. I'm head of the Midlands Net Zero Hub. We're here today to talk to you about the Home Decarbonisation Skills Training Competition. And this day is specifically focusing on training providers. So hopefully if you're with us today, you are a training provider and keen to hear about the competition we're looking to launch in the near future. So a big welcome. I'll run through a little bit of background on the hub for those of you who may not have heard of us previously, and just do a little bit of context setting. We'll pass over to Clive after that, who was successful at a previous round of skills training competition, so he'll have some useful insights for you all on how he found the previous competition to this. And then we've got Elliot Ruth from Bayes, who'll go through some of the details of the competition for you. And after that, there'll be the opportunity for us to answer some of the questions. As we go through the three presentations, please do feel free to start putting your questions in the chat. And then once we've gone through the presentations, we'll start picking those questions up and responding to them for you. So first slide, please, Catherine. So who are the Midlands Net Zero Hub? Well, we're fully funded by the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, generally referred to as BEIS, and Nottingham City Council act as our accountable body. So the whole hub team are fully employed by Nottingham City Council, but we work across the region, delivering a range of projects and programmes, working closely with the LEPs and local authorities. And this is in line with the LEP energy strategies that were produced back in 2018 and early 2019, and also in support of the UK government's commitment to net zero. We were formerly known as the Midlands Energy Hub, but when the net zero strategy was released, we had a name change and a rebrand to align with the net zero strategy that was put out. We also deliver national programmes as well as regional, so I've just summarised a few of the programmes there we're delivering. So there's the Local Capacity Support Programme, which is where we've got officers spread out across the 9 Midlands LEPs. We're supporting those LEPs and LAs to develop projects. We've got 3 big retrofit programmes that are being delivered at the moment: Local Authority Delivery Phase 2, Sustainable Warmth Competition and the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. So across these 3 programmes, we're working very closely with the LAs and the housing associations to see these schemes delivered. And to date, the amount of funding for these 3 that have been channelled through the hub is in the realm of about 155 million. And we're also hoping to put a bit into SHDF Wave 2 as well, and build a consortium around that. So a significant amount of funding there for retrofit in the region. And of course, this is happening in other hub areas as well across England. We've previously run the skills training competition that was completed, and I'll touch on some of the details on the next slide in a moment. And that's kind of what's led to skills training 2. But we've also been running a national programme on the private rental sector minimum energy efficiency standard enforcement competition. This was covering England and Wales, and we've been working with 59 local authorities on the enforcement of MEES in the private rental sector. And we're looking to work with a further 25-26 LAs this year off the back of receiving additional funding in that space. We've also got a team who are working on the public sector decarbonisation skills fund. So this is looking at the public estate and building up solid business cases around how we can decarbonise some of these buildings, which, heat in particular is a really big challenge. And finally, we're drawing to conclusion the Royal Community Energy Fund this financial year. But we're working with 35 community groups across the Midlands to develop a range of really exciting, interesting, community-led, place-based projects, bringing hydro back to UNESCO World Heritage Sites through to combining, solar, wind and energy storage with EV charge points. So a whole host of activity going on, but obviously the key one today is that skills training piece, which is absolutely key to the successful delivery of some of the programmes we're responsible for. Next slide, please, Catherine. So looking at the first iteration of the programme we delivered, it was run between 2020 and 2021 with 5.7 million that was claimed by providers. There were initially 18 appointed, of which 16 went to deliver in full and up to the deadline. Off the back of this, we had an external evaluation of which that report is available on our website, and we've provided the link there. But overall, it was really, really successful. I mean, the figures there, you know, almost 7,000 training courses fully completed. We had just over 300 organisations were supported for PAS and MCS accreditation, and you know, a 92% learner satisfaction rate. So, you know, some really good figures there off the back of the hard work of those successful training providers who work closely with us to deliver those programmes. So that's really been positive and given us the confidence and based the confidence to look at delivering a new competition. There are some changes, so we'll go through those when Elliot does his presentation. But we thought it'd be really good before we went into the detail of the competition for you to hear from Clive, who delivered, or was one of the training providers to delivered under the previous competition. So Clive, I'll pass over to you. A big thank you for coming along today and providing your thoughts and insights, which I'm sure others who are looking to bid into this round of funding will find really useful. So over to you.
Yes, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks first to Anya, Catherine, and everyone at Midlands Energy Hub for the opportunity to tell a few people about our experiences. I will say it's not just myself; it's my co-director Mark Grading. The two of us worked equally together on this whole project, and obviously within our company. Yeah, a joint operation between us. If we could have the next slide, please, Catherine. So very quick introduction. I'm going to try and avoid speaking directly from the slide itself, but so myself and Mark have been in the heat pump industry around about 15 years each, so we've seen a lot, particularly on the domestic side of things. We were a fully established, or still are a fully established installation company. But during COVID and everything that was going on there, we started to diversify and started to look at other avenues for the business to go in, and we'd begun going down the route of becoming an accredited training company. We are now a fully accredited company with LCL awards. And when this opportunity arose that was funded by BEIS, we looked at what we thought were the key points for providing upskilling and training within the industry, and we wanted to focus as much on support trades as well as the main installation trades within the heat pump industry. So that was where we took our focus, and as it says there, we wanted to give back some of the knowledge and industry experience that we've gained over these years, which did prove stressful, quite challenging within some of the short time frames and hitting the targets, but ultimately, as you'll hopefully see, it was very rewarding. So next slide, please, Catherine. So, this is where it's working, the animation bit. So the challenges that we faced in this in entering this competition were obviously meeting the scope of the competition. The first hurdle was really getting in place all the required criteria and making sure that we could meet that criteria within that time frame. The next one, thank you. And then, as I mentioned earlier, deciding on what skill sets we wanted to focus on. So that was really making the decision not to go with just providing installation training courses for installers, heating engineers and plumbers. There's already a lot of organisations out there doing that very successfully and very well. We do that, by the way, but we also wanted to focus on the outlying trades, particularly surveys, heat loss calculations, noise assessments associated with air source heat pumps, those kind of areas which we feel were or are still somewhat lacking in dedicated and accredited training. So we put together a course that really focused on those areas, providing high quality training for surveyors to go out do all the full measuring, the full calculations required for successful heat pump installations and as part of the full design. So next line, please. Thanks. So the challenge of constructing that course content was quite intense. It was a relatively short time scale. We only had at most, I think, a couple of months to really put that course together and make sure that it was going to meet the requirements of the competition. Thanks, Catherine. And then probably this was really the biggest challenge of all, was making sure that we could get the number of candidates that we said we would get. And this, I think, was a big challenge for all the companies involved. And it presented us with a bit of a dilemma in that we had to decide how we were going to market this and how we were going to attract those candidates. We were lucky in that we had some links already with a couple of other training and event organisations, and we expanded those links. But in the first instance, we had to go to market. We had to do some advertising and put ourselves out on places like LinkedIn to try to start to get those candidates in. Once we started getting the candidates in, then some of the growth of getting them in came through word of mouth, and we managed to meet our first target, but we did have to spend quite a lot of time and money to do that. And then obviously the challenge of delivering the training in a clear format. Initially, of course, the training was supposed to be in person, going to sites. We have a mobile trailer that we intended to take to sites with us to do the practical element of our training. But with everything that happened with COVID, we had to revert to online training, which meant a bit of a change in how we presented the course, and so we had to overcome that challenge. And then finally, the challenge of making sure that there is ongoing support and mentoring. What we didn't want to do was just provide a training and course, say thanks very much, there's your course, there's your CPD or your qualification, off you go. So we formed an online forum as a support forum, which initially had good take up. I'm going to be honest, and since in the year since that we formed that, the activity on that forum has dropped down a bit. Hopefully that's because people have got the knowledge that they need, but we are intending to revamp that forum, especially in light of the second round of skills funding that may be available. We want to really provide the ongoing support that may be required by surveyors. Okay, next slide, please, Catherine. Thank you. And so, lessons that we learned. These are going to be very obvious. You've got to be prepared to put the hours in, to put your bid in and get the right information on the competition. That's obviously, it's a very obvious thing to state, but it takes time and effort to do this. Then you're going to have to put the hours in to put the course together. There was many a long night. I don't say this lightly. There's quite a few long nights just writing the content, putting it all together, making sure it reached the sort of training that we wanted it to reach, the type of content that we wanted it to actually achieve. And we didn't just want to pull content from other courses. We wanted to start with fresh stuff, so we had to write a lot of it ourselves. And then, of course, you've got to be prepared for the disappointments, which you will get. I'm sure a lot of you have already applied for this kind of funding before, but the most disappointing thing for us was how hard it seemed at the beginning to get the numbers of the candidates on the courses that we wanted. Once we'd gained traction, that became easier and easier throughout the initial 3-4 month phase of the competition of giving the courses. But initially it was quite disappointing. We thought we'd get higher numbers at the start. So yeah, you've got to be prepared for that. And this was a bonus. Be very prepared to have your business, as it says here, turned on its head. We wanted to go in the direction of training, but we did not anticipate, one, how quickly we could get to where we were aiming for, and the actual direction that it would take in us becoming fully accredited within well, probably within less than a year, and being able to give the training that we are now giving, and the contacts that we've made within this industry to develop our business and hopefully help others with it. And then, yeah, this is a bit tongue-in-cheek perhaps, but you're going to experience hopefully a great deal of satisfaction from seeing the people gain from the courses that you deliver and go on to do some meaningful work in the industry. We've now got a number of surveyors who are working with us, carrying out surveys, heat loss surveys, who weren't in that industry before, and who they came on our course and have since gone on to be very useful contacts for us to use, and obviously in their own right. So the opportunities that we gained, Catherine, if we could go, thank you very much. I'm going to try not to read from here, but we have basically experienced a huge amount of opportunities following on from the delivering of the course and linking up with other companies and collaborating with them since we've delivered these courses. And as it says, we're a fully fledged accredited training company, and we think we're actually quite unique in that we have a demonstration trailer that we already own, but we were able to refit this to be used as a dedicated mobile training unit, and that we think it's unique. We think we're the only one in the UK that has an accredited mobile training rig, and it means that we can go to any location, certainly within England and Wales, to deliver training, to deliver accredited training. And it means that companies don't have to send their engineers all over the place to get to the different locations to take the relevant courses. And it means we're able to also give non-accredited courses. We can do bespoke training, really based around whatever a company will want, whether they want us to focus on electrical stuff, plumbing stuff, heat loss stuff. We can actually devise courses in line with those that aren't accredited but are still worth having. But the biggest thing that we think that we're able to deliver now as an opportunity is the heat loss calculations, the heat loss survey courses, and empower the candidates to go on and either work for themselves or work within other companies with the knowledge that they've done some meaningful training. And we are in the process of getting our heat loss course fully accredited with Abbey and working in conjunction with Stroma to get that as a fully accredited course. So it gives the candidates a qualification to be able to demonstrate that they are able to go out and do those surveys to the right standard. There's a relevant MCS standard and British standard, and then go to installation companies and either work for them directly or work alongside them as subcontractors. And the other thing that we're really proud of, I'm conscious that I'm perhaps going over time a bit, but we're really proud of the fact that we've engaged with local colleges and we've started training courses for them. We recently trained 12 lecturers from Fareham and associated colleges in Hampshire on the accredited heat pump course to enable them to impart that knowledge that they had a a basis of, but didn't have the detailed knowledge, onto their students. And this covers the T-level courses as well, that we're engaging with Loughborough College and hopefully Cirencester colleges as well. We've had some talks with them to deliver some again training to their lecturers, and hopefully some knowledge and experience to their T-level students in the future. And we want to expand on this and really get the information out to these younger students right at the start of their career, so that they can come into the renewable heating industry forearmed with knowledge and experience to really jumpstart them into that industry. Okay, last slide. I think I've already touched on this, as it says there. We're in the process of getting this heat loss survey course accredited, and it can be used for heat pumps, and it will also comply with Part L building regs for room by room heat loss calculations on new buildings, which is going to be a requirement. So we're quite excited about this, as well as another course that we're in the process of putting together, which is a dedicated heat pump for electricians course. We delivered that a first iteration of that actually yesterday to some of the guys, 9 guys at Loughborough College, and that went over very, very well. We've got some really good feedback from them. We've got a few little tweaks to do to that, but again, we think this is going to be the first dedicated accredited course for electricians for heat pumps. So we are growing and diversifying, and a lot of this is down to the experiences and successful funding that we've had from the BEIS competition. Just a final couple of pictures. That's our mobile training rig. You can't see into it very well, but it's set up as a fully working air source heat pump system, and it does work off an electrical supply and produces heat, so it is usable as an event demonstrator as well. That's my small part. Hope I haven't gone over too much, Catherine. Thanks very much, everybody, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation there, Clive. Really nice to see how you took the opportunity, and it's obviously had the positive impact, upskilling the supply chain, which is key. We know this from our retrofit programs, but also giving you the opportunity to grow and evolve your business as well, which is fantastic to hear about. So thank you. So we'll move on now to Elliot, who's going to go into some of the detail now around the actual funding itself. So Elliot, thank you. Over to you.
Cheers, thank you, Michael. So yeah, as Michael said, I'm going to talk to you a bit more in detail about the funding opportunities that are available, and it's sort of what we are looking to build up this supply chain to work on. So to start with, it'd be good to have a bit of background. So tackling climate change is one of the priority focuses for government, and this is evidenced by the fact that in 2019, the government set a legally binding target to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions from the UK economy by 2050. So buildings have a very big part to play in this, and within the UK, it has some of the oldest and least efficient homes in Europe. So there's a lot of work that will need to be done to tackle this within the UK, and we estimate that we'll need to decarbonise around 30 million homes by 2050 to achieve those targets. So as I mentioned at the start, to deliver that scale of work, we'll need to have a strong and robust supply chain, and obviously it's not going to be there from the start. So we will need to work with, for example, training providers and employers to get people trained up, get them skilled, having the right skills, qualifications that are needed to go out and be able to deliver those kind of works at scales. So just on screen there, we've got some examples of the levels of funding that's being invested into home retrofit by the government. So you can see, for example, there's 3 phases of a local authority delivery scheme. We have the home upgrade grant, phase 1, as well as the social housing decarbonisation fund and the boiler upgrade scheme. So we've got a wide range of different types of support, different types of work that is currently underway and going to continue to be done over the next few years. Catherine, could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so in terms of the future schemes, as I mentioned, the government is committed to investing in this, and further to the initial investment we saw on the previous slide, the government's announced more than £3.9 billion of new funding for decarbonising heat and buildings, and this is seen through the following schemes. So the the energy company obligation, that has been increased to £1 billion per year from 2022 to 2026. And then in addition to that, there was additional funding committed to the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, as well as some additional funding committed to the home upgrade grant through the spending review. So as you can see there is currently, and there will continue to be, substantial amounts of funding invested into homes retrofit. So we expect that there will be a pipeline of people that are looking to get involved in this work that will need to be trained up to gain those relevant skills and qualifications that we're looking to support through this competition. Catherine, could you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so now I'm going to talk to you a bit more about the competition itself. So for this year, we are looking to set up a £9.2 million scheme to provide grant awards to a range of training providers in England. And what we want them to do is go out and provide the appropriate sort of training and support to installers that we are looking to have working in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy schemes that we touched on those previous 2 slides. Yeah. So in terms of the objectives of the competition, we want to make progress in increasing the number of qualified and trained installers and other retrofit professionals that are needed to deliver the vast amounts of installations that are needed. So in terms of how we think we will be able to do this, it will be through delivering installation training to the national occupational standards or higher, through training that will lead to a formal qualification or the trainee being able to demonstrate competence, delivering training that's directed towards installation companies that they need to gain PAS 2030-2019 certification, which is something that will be required for installation companies to go on and work on those government-funded schemes. Also to deliver training in energy efficiency and low carbon heating measures such as heat pumps to both those with existing construction skills and those that are new to the sector. And in addition to that, potentially providing support for training in both retrofit assessor and retrofit coordinator skills that are required for the PAS 2035 standard. So yeah, in terms of a brief summary of the guidance, we are, as I mentioned before, we want the training to support the installation standards that are required on the base scheme. So installers will need to be working for a Trustmark registered organisation and certified to the appropriate PAS or MCS standards, depending on what measures they're working to install. There is £9.2 million of funding available for training providers. However, each individual provider will only be able to bid for a maximum of £1 million to support their project. The providers must be based in England, and any face-to-face or classroom-based training will need to also take place in England. And in terms of what we're looking for a spread across the different hub areas to ensure that all the regions are served well, and we can continue to ensure that we can deliver the measures that are required through the base schemes across the country. The scheme, the training program will be split into 3 work packages. So the first work package looks at retrofit assessment, retrofit coordinator training. We're expecting that there will be up to 2,400 qualifications in this area. Obviously, we wouldn't expect a single training provider to push to try and deliver all of those. These are the sort of the total numbers that we are expecting to deliver across the competition as a whole. Work package 2 looks at insulation. So that covers things such as underfloor insulation, internal and external wall insulation, and loft insulation. For this, we're expecting around 3,500 packages. And then work package 3, the last work package, is for heat pumps. So it's expected that up to 3,000 training packages will be delivered to individuals. Yeah, so in terms of the requirements for applying, we will need, within your bid, we'll expect you to be able to demonstrate that you have relevant experience in delivering the training that you're hoping to provide. The applicants will also need to be registered with a registered training provider with one of the bodies listed on the slide. We will also expect you to be able to demonstrate evidence of the demand for the training, and also show that the course that you're looking to provide will be leading to a recognised qualification. And then finally, we want you to be able to demonstrate how you will comply with the subsidy control rules. However, the guidance will that we will be publishing to go alongside the application form will set out all of the details that we've covered in this part of the presentation in a lot more detail, and I'm sure there'll be opportunities to ask questions about any of these points if anything is unclear at the end of this. Yeah, so, and lastly, just on the logistics, all applications will need to be submitted to the Midlands Net Zero Hub by 11 on the 5th of October. That is when we'll be closing. In terms of the timetable for delivery here, the competition will launch on the 5th of September and it will close on the 5th of October. So we've got a bit of a longer delivery window this time around. And we have a timetable for delivery up there. And as it says on the screen, some of these dates may be subject to change in advance of the competition launch. We're just finalising the last bits and pieces. But yes, I think that is everything from me at this point. So I'm not sure if Michael, I'm not sure what's next.
That's right. No, thanks, Elliot. It's over to the Q&A. So while we envisage this being an hour, we put 90 minutes in just to make sure we weren't rushed with the information going out to you all, and also to give you a chance to put some questions in. So now we've run through everything. If you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat. There are a couple appearing already, which I'll deal with now. But you can see as well that our email address for the competition is on there. So if anything does come to mind after the event, please do let us know, as we will be populating a Q&A depending on the questions that come in this afternoon. The most popular one, first and foremost, that's come through is whether or not the slides will be made available. So yes, we can look to make those slides available to you. So yeah, happy to share those, and we've also got a list of everybody who's signed up. There was a question that's come in, Clive. I actually think this was aimed at yourself, given the timing of when that question came in. And there was just a quick question on the courses you're running about whether or not you were also had the inclusion of what happens after the heat pump is installed. So is the consumer going to be supported? So training given on how to communicate to the customer, how does this piece of equipment work?
Yeah, to a degree, I would say yes, but in terms of in manufacturer specific items, you know, if you're installing a heat pump, it's down to the individual manufacturer operation as to how it works in many ways, and it's always the controls that differ between the manufacturers. So the installer stroke commissioning engineer is really going to have to be manufacturer trained to be able to impart that knowledge onto the end user. Now, from my experience, most installers do get themselves on the manufacturer's courses so that they understand fully the requirements for, let's say, I'm going to use a brand name, shoot me down if I shouldn't, but so if you're installing a Panasonic heat pump, you really should go on the Panasonic training course, which is a 2-day course. It's manufacturer focused. It isn't focused on things like particularly certain aspects of installation, but it's or heat loss surveys or necessarily design, but it does cover a bit of that, but it's focusing on how their specific controls operate and therefore how you can explain those to the end user. So the training that we offer does touch on it a little bit, but it doesn't cover it in enough detail to say you will know how to explain how to use a heat pump. Okay, does that help?
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much, Clive. Right, the rest of the questions are aimed specifically at the guidance. So Anya, Elliot, I'll bring you in as I work through. So the first question is just reference the 9.2 million that's been made available. Obviously, it's an increase on what was provided previously, and building on the success. But it's just a question on whether or not there's likely to be further funding available in due course to encourage medium to large scale schemes.
That is all we have at the moment, and that's just what we have to work with. But I can definitely take it away and see if there is scope to have discussions around this. But at the moment, that is all we have.
Thank you, Elliot. We've got a question in from Mark around non-accredited training. So the question is if a level of competence can be determined by appropriate testing and recognition of attendance. This is on the basis that they've got courses going through accreditation process, but may not be accredited within the available time frame. Anya and Elliot, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand our approach on this is that we are essentially looking for the courses to be accredited at point of the launch of competition. The next question sorry, Anya?
No, I was just going to say, yeah, that's the case. We're looking for accredited sort of courses at this stage, mostly because we really want any persons who complete the courses to sort of hit the ground running and be able to support the government schemes, which they need to be accredited and registered under Trustmark or MCS. So that's why we have a tendency to sort of go for accredited in this particular scheme.
Thanks, Anya. A question from Dave reference, is there a minimum bid value? Well, we've set a maximum bid value of £1 million. We've not put a minimum bid value in. But of course, this comes back to the demonstration of value for money. So I would imagine if there's only a very small offering, it may struggle to compete with some of the larger ones. But that being said, if you're confident that you can provide that quality on a smaller bid, then we're happy to do so. We had a real mix of bids under the last fund, and there were some smaller ones that were successful because they were able to demonstrate that quality and value for money. So we certainly wouldn't discourage, but just to note there is a balance there between the two. Where do you go if you have a question after the 10th of September? Well, we've popped our email address there on the screen. So if you do have any questions, then obviously do get in touch with us, and we'll do what we can to support and provide an answer where we're able to. And the there's a good question coming in, getting into the details of it now, was there's £1 million maximum. Is it for each provider or for each lot? So we're working to, it's a maximum of £1 million for the provider. So if you're bidding for multiple lots, you're still within that £1 million cap.
Sorry, Michael, I just wanted to add that the maximum bid is sort of restricted by the subsidy control rules. So it's not us sort of picking a random number and just saying it's for the lot or provider. The provider needs to meet subsidy control rules, which are confined by a limited spend per provider, which is why it's 1 million per provider.
Thank you, Anya, and thank you. That was a good question there. And then one, how is the provision funded? Bidders expected to cost up provision to be included in their bid. I think this is, based on the last one, a good one for you to answer the detail on that, Anya, on how it was balanced previously.
Sorry, my mic was off. So the way that we set it out last time was based on the subsidy control. We expected the subsidy control to sort of meet approximately 60 to 70% of the bid, and then the remaining amount was to be supported either by the learners themselves providing the funding, or by the provider themselves taking on that funding difference. It sort of varied between providers, and it was up to the provider to do so, but the way that we paid the funding throughout was by evidence-based. So we needed the each provider to sort of evidence their progression throughout the time scale, to sort of evidence that they were delivering the numbers, that the courses were accredited, that they had a good log of who attended, what they did, and then we paid it based on the completion of those courses. I think the last time round we managed to split some of the courses, which were quite long, into sections and paid per element that was completed, but that's how we ended up paying. However, we did provide a fixed amount at the very beginning to help you set up the course delivery. So that was provided at the very beginning, and then it was paid thereafter based on evidence base.
Brilliant, thanks, Anya. Then a question, is the training aimed only at installers or for the wider supply chain? So, for example, housing or repair maintenance companies. Elliot, is that one you're happy to pick up on?
Yes. So I think, I think it's the supply chain as a whole.
Thank you, Elliot. And just to confirm on this, we will be writing this out with a full Q&A as well for circulation. So if people are struggling to make the notes and keep up with the pace, we are making a note of the questions, and let's be circulating the answers out on this. Okay. So do installation measures cover all installation measures or just those listed on the slides? Quickly trying to backtrack onto the slides. Anya, Elliot, anything from either of you on that particular point? Or we can maybe respond to that one afterwards once we've just rechecked the list.
Yeah, we can pick that one up after.
Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, we'll follow that up and provide detail after the case for you. But thank you for the question. One from Griff, will the funding be just for training or will it support certification as well as per the previous one? Elliot, you referenced this briefly on the slide, so do you just want to pick that one up?
Yeah, so we will just be doing training only this time around.
Thank you. And then any eligibility requirements for the learners. So I'll pick this one. So it's likely to depend on the course that's being run. We would expect there to be a degree of guidance from yourself on that, depending on which training package you are putting a bid in for and the level of knowledge that's useful. We certainly saw in some of the previous with the work some of the previous providers did, that there was certainly a need for eligibility requirements for the learners on quite a few of the courses, but there was some again that was less important. So I think it's important for you to flag in your bids to us where you think eligibility requirements are useful and the reason for that, and vice versa if you don't think eligibility requirements are necessary. Just help guide with that quality of candidate we're expecting to come through. But I would again expect with what we're looking for here there to be a little bit of a mix, depending on the work package. Okay, a question in particular, will installers explain the basics? Well, this will come down to what the training provider there is looking to teach on their course. There's a reference there about don't turn the heat pump on enough to save money and that side of things. So again, that will depend on which measure and work package you're going for. But I think there's always a degree of usefulness to these things, and it kind of links into the question Clive answered earlier, actually, around being able to transfer that knowledge to the people who are doing the work and then on to the end user. So there's always certainly value to making sure that the end user is happy with what's gone in and understand it. And obviously a degree of that falls down to the person who's installing it and the knowledge they've gleaned from the training. So there is a link there. We've got a question there around the challenging delivery timescale, that 6-month period. So we had a challenging delivery timescale previously, which led to, there were successes from that, and it's led to round 2. Elliot, I don't think we can answer whether or not there'll be a round 3 on that. So I'll publish the question, but it's not something I think we're able to say anything on at this stage, I'm afraid. And then a question on pen portraits on notification of winners. So we'll certainly be publishing a list of the people who will be successful. Last time we didn't provide huge levels of detail there, but we did link through to their websites, as I recall. So there will be the opportunity for people to track through and see who was successful in the competition. Elliot, a question, it's pretty straightforward, I think, but just in case you want to pick up any detail on this, on why it's limited to England, obviously linked to devolution. But
yeah, it's to align with the schemes that we're looking to support with the training. The schemes are England-based schemes, so we need to ensure that the people that we're training are those most likely to then go on to work to support the schemes.
That's great. Thank you very much, Elliot. Okay, so just a moment there. There's quite a long question there from Dean. We've got SWIP. So I imagine this is referencing solid wall insulation. Being a specialist systems designer of certain solutions such as internal wall, room in the roof, and then the floor insulation. And they're looking to see if there's scope for them to be involved to provide the sort of training to upskill the region for insulation energy efficiency measures. I mean, there's the installation package there, so if you're looking at training within that and what we detail out, then I imagine there would be scope. But I'll take a little bit more time to go over the question, Dean. If I need to follow up, I will before we publish that on the Q&A. Just make sure we've got the nuance of that. What is the best way for smaller regional trainers to get involved, given they're unlikely to meet some of the requirements, and can there be consortium bids? We did have some smaller regional trainers last time that were successful in coming through, but there is also the option for consortium bids. Anya, is there anything you just want to add on that bit based on what we saw last time? Because we did have a mix of the both.
Yeah, we did have some bidders who sort of worked in partnership with some large organisations to deliver some schemes. It may not work with you, and obviously there are pros and cons to approaching it that way. But like Michael did allude to, we did actually have some smaller organisations who bid and were successful and delivered successfully. So that wouldn't play against you at all in your bidding process. So if you wanted to just bid as a smaller regional trainer, sometimes it actually falls in your benefit because we do want that regional spread. So you might actually fall in an area where we actually are looking for a trainer in a particular work package. So don't let that deter you. But of course, if you would like to do a more of a joint bid, that wouldn't be a hindrance either.
Thanks, Anya. Okay. There we go. I was just reading the one from Jenny, and we've covered that one. So thank you, Jenny. I'll publish it, but just to make sure we pick that up in the Q&A and make sure we link the two questions together. And it's the same for Dean as well. That's good. It means we're being efficient by answering multiple questions at a time. But again, I'll publish your question, Dean. And then we'll just make sure when we do the document that, again, we've linked the two and fully answered them. And then a question from Griff. When you say accredited, is that a formal qualification as recognised by Ofqual? Is there anything you just want to build on that accreditation piece, Elliot? Because obviously we're keen to make sure that everything is accredited this time round. But is there anything you just want to build on that with a question in from Griff?
I will make sure that it's explicitly clear in the guidance that we're going to publish. I'm going to make a note on that right now.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, Elliot. As I said, we'll also then confirm that, Griff, in the Q&A. So I imagine, Gemma, you've got a question there on online training in heating systems design and the course being endorsed by BPEC. Will this fit into any of the work packages and will we be eligible to apply? That's one that I think we'll take away. I'll publish, make sure we've got it, and then we can just confirm back to you specifically on that. And then a question on, is this a fully funded scheme or partly funded as per the previous competition? So, Anya, I think you kind of picked this up earlier, I think, when you referenced the balance.
Yeah. So we're very much restricted by what the requirements are in subsidy control. And at the minute, we're just getting some final formal advice on what we can or cannot do. So that's something that we'll look to confirm in the Q&A when that's made available. But for the previous one, when we went under state aid rules, we were all the courses were part funded. And funding was only available for a certain percentage, and as I mentioned earlier, it was like 60 or 70%. And the providers had to propose a plan for how they would support the remaining amount, the 40 or 30%. And for many of them, they encouraged the learners to pay that difference. Others actually supported them and provided the courses for free. It does depend on yourselves. It's your own financial plan that will deter how you will approach that. But ultimately, we are expecting it to be a part funded, but it will be a significant part funded, but we will look to clarify that. So when the guidance comes out, there should be some notes within the guidance that will indicate what we're expecting as part of that subsidy control element.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Tanya. And then we're likely to do the same with the next question there, in terms of funding covering things such as low temperature heating design, water regulations, as well as heat pump qualifications. So obviously we've got that heat pump aspect there, and we'll just clarify the details in the guidance. Like I said, these questions are also useful to help us as we do these final tweaks to the guidance to make sure these things are covered, and to make sure we're covering what's needed. So thank you for that question, and we'll add that to our list and confirm in due course. Okay, lots of questions today. Yeah, so a good question there from Jenny. Just referencing the funding eligibility for the first Green Skills competition was learners had to live or work in England. Would that be the same this time? And do learners have to live and work in England? So I think the preference there, Jenny, is that live and work in England this time round. We're keen to make sure it's really benefiting the programmes that are happening in England. We'll just clarify on that first bit on the work aspect. But certainly there's the preference there. So we'll pick that up and just clarify the Wales and Scotland element if you've got people travelling over the border. Then a question in from Lynn in around match funding requirement from a employer, individual training provider. Yes, Anya's kind of part picked that up a moment ago. But again, there's also the aspect, depending on how we finally publish the guidance around subsea control in particular. But of course, there's that value for money aspect as well, in terms of if there is match funding provided, depending on the level you expect to put in, whether that be from the employer or the training provider or individual, it's how far you can then stretch what you're bidding in for as well. And there is, of course, a balance there. Yes, and then a question around the funding in terms of if we're going to manage it in a similar way to previous, in terms of mobilisation followed by delivery. We certainly expect to at this stage. We understand it's key. It helps to have that initial seed funding, for want of a better term, to get the ball rolling. So we would look to follow suit and do something similar. And then in terms of looking at the good geographical spread, the question in around that and how we make sure we don't get all the training delivered in one area. Again, we've advertised this quite widely across England. We had reasonable coverage in the last competition, and obviously we're keen to encourage and make sure we get bids in from across the region to make sure we do have a good geographical spread. We know there are certainly challenges in some areas, but where we can, we're going to try and do what we can with the bids that come in to ensure that we're getting quality training provision as broadly as possible across the country. Okay, we've got a question in Elliot. I think we may need to take this one away. We've got a question here on whether or not a local authority can lead a bid for a consortium of training providers through a retrofit academy style model. Is that one you think we can answer now, or is this a takeaway?
Takeaway.
Takeaway. Super. Okay, so we'll publish and pick up offer there from a consortia. I'll put it in the chat for you all to see. GTEC, who are present today, have said they're happy to work in the consortia. Yeah, please feel free to follow up, or we're happy to connect through ourselves. So do drop us an email and we can put you in touch with GTEC if you're looking at consortia as a possible option. So a question there around, would Work Package 1 consider non-accredited training aimed at giving retrofit assessors and retrofit coordinators practical training on how to do the job? I think that feeds back to our earlier points of we're looking at making sure that all the training that's been done is accredited. Right, we picked that one up. And then a question there, are the courses being delivered going to be checked to ensure they're sufficient in terms of content and suitability? So yeah, within the guidance, and as we did prior, the hub will have the option to attend some of the courses and to carry out checks to make sure that everything is being delivered in the way that we're being told it's been delivered. Is there anything you just want to expand on that based on how we went about that last time, Anya?
So obviously when you put in your application, we'll be checking your courses and they'll need to make sure they're accredited by one of the accreditation bodies we're happy to approve. So that will all be in the guidance and that will be clear. Throughout the delivery of the courses, we also did checks for, we sort of spot checked and also checked with accreditation bodies to ensure that they were being followed through, and we also ensured that we did checks during the delivery to meet the requirements. So it sounds really intensive, and to some extent it can be, but once the process is in place, it's quite easy to follow through, and hopefully, you know, although the other providers who might be here can account for it, it can be a bit onerous at times, but it is really essential for us to ensure that they are being suitable for delivery. But in the first instance, through the application, you will be asked to provide all the adequate information for the type of course you will be delivering. So that will be at the very early stages.
Okay. Thanks, Anya. And then Elliot, a question there. I don't think we define exact amounts, but Griff's asking if there's an amount that's been allocated already per work package. Obviously, we've got an idea of numbers through each work package, but we've not set a defined amount yet, have we?
No, there isn't a amount of funding per work package. We're just looking to ensure the regional coverage and the spread across the work packages as well. So we don't want to have loads of training in work package 1 and then none in work package 3. We want to get that balance across the board.
Thanks, Elliot. And then a question on when do you expect to publish the full guidance? So we had the timetable up on the slide. So
when the competition goes live on the 5th of September, there'll be a link on the BEIS website that we will send to everybody who's attended today and others that we know might be interested. And we'll send you a link. You'll be able to download the guidance and the application form on that day. Unfortunately, it won't be available before that point, but it will be available on that day. I mean, hopefully the guidance won't be too onerous. It's not an incredibly long document, but it has all the important elements within it. So you should be able to pull anything relevant from there.
Thanks, Annie, and thanks, Catherine, for quickly switching the slides on the screen there for the timetable. And as we said, that we're working to the date. There is the chance things may change, but obviously we're hoping to work to that timetable, particularly given the fact we want to give everybody as long as possible to get on with the delivery. Is online training acceptable, or must all training be delivered face to face? If acceptable, do the geographic limitations England only still apply? It depends on what the training is. There are some courses we saw that worked well online. Some of the challenges we had previously were, the COVID aspect coming in, which meant that some courses switched to online and actually were delivered successfully. But of course, there are other courses that simply don't work well online, and that in-person aspect is key. So we're likely to expect a bit of both coming in, depending on what work package and the specific training is being flagged there. But the geographic limitations in terms of who is being trained still applies. I will clarify, but there may be scope for the training provision to sit outside England if all the training's been done in England. We had something, a note there around that in the guidance, Elliot, but I don't think it was in the slide. So is that something we will be clarifying?
Yeah, we'll clarify that in the guidance.
Thanks, Elliot. And will the guidance only be available once an EOI has been submitted? So I think on that, Anya, isn't it? We're looking to get the expression of interest in to understand the number of bids we're likely to get. But of course, the guidance will be published online for all.
Yeah, the EOI is really to give us an indication of who might be interested in, whether we can start to see any gaps in particular areas, and we can maybe send some feelers out that we feel like there might be a gap in a particular delivery area. But it does give us that idea that there is an interest for the funding and where it is likely to be the strongest. It will give us that understanding. I think it was raised earlier about, is there fixed amounts for certain work packages? There isn't, but it will let us know where there's a greater interest in some work packages, and we might need to just look at how it's distributed, but it just gives us that idea. But the guidance will be available when the competition goes live.
And of course, it will also help us plan and resource accordingly for when it comes to assessing of the bids. So if we've had a good number of expressions of interest in, we know we need to get a few more people in to support with the assessment of said bids. So yeah, if you are interested, please use the UI to let us know. Okay. Griff, you've got a question there on work package 5. We've tweaked it. We've narrowed the criteria down on this one. So we've got the 3 work packages there. So the heating and hot water controls work package isn't sat within this one. And then what looks to be the final question. I said we've had about 40 questions, which is really good. So thank you all. We've got one about, is a webinar plan for wider stakeholders? Yes, we are planning a wider one, and we will be advertising it through our social media channels shortly. We're just finalising the dates and the people who need to speak. But yes, it will be happening hopefully within the next week or so.
So I just wanted to raise for that particular event that we are running, it will hopefully provide the support for any providers who are interested in bidding for this, is that we are looking to promote that these courses will be available, and there will be heavily subsidised courses, which will hopefully generate the interest within these areas. And that's how we're looking at it. So we're looking at hopefully spreading the net a little bit wider to promote the scheme, to allow that to happen. So hopefully it will provide a support mechanism for any interested providers.
Okay, well, Anya, Elliot, Clive, thank you very much for presenting and supporting with the answers to the questions. For those of you that have come along and attended today, really appreciate you spending the time to listen to the information we had to share with you. We look forward to hopefully receiving the expression of interest from you, and then in due course, hopefully the funding bids. As I said, the last scheme was, there were challenges, but ultimately really successful, some great outcomes as the evaluation of the scheme demonstrated. And what we saw, some organisations really grasp the opportunity with both hands and grow their businesses, which is all key to essentially enabling us to meet our net zero targets and make sure these retrofit programs that we're working hard to deliver have the people there to actually do the installation work and help make these schemes a success. So it's all interlinked. It's all key to the drive to net zero, and of course it's something that's becoming increasingly important at the moment, as we're aware, more than aware of rising energy prices. So this is an important part of the puzzle, just making sure we've got the people there to help combat the challenges we're facing. So thank you very much for your time. We look forward to hearing from you. We will, as I said, get the slide shared out, and also in due course the Q&A document built up and answered as well. So thank you. Have a good rest of the afternoon. Bye now.